Sorry, Jeff. I was opening a file right when you asked me a question, and it went into Excel, and I couldn't get back. Yeah, I can hear you good.
We can hear you really good too. So, do you have something you want me to share? I will make you a host. Do you have something you want to share on the screen?
Yeah, I think Sheena printed it off here right before the meeting for everybody.
Yes, we're gonna open up and we have to do the line of credit special meeting.
Got your mics on?
Share.
So we'll call the meeting to start at 5:32 p.m. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The agenda, I need a motion and a second to approve the February 5th, 2024 special meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion. Second by Lyon.
Robin motions, Sonstegard motions, Lyon seconds.
Discussion.
Any discussion? None. What do we see? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Same sign, yeah? Okay. None, okay, motion passes. And then we have a resolution 2023-2024, 24, and resolution 2023-24-25. I need a motion and a second to rescind, to enter into a line of credit with Border Bank. Is there, no, I missed a whole line. Resolution 2023-24, and adapt Resolution 2023-24-25 to authorizing the district to enter into a line of credit agreement with Border Bank.
I'll make that motion.
Ellis,
Second by Lyon.
second by Lyon.
So it's,
Any discussion?
yes, the only thing that's different is the dollar amount.
So the term is, the credit line is for $350,000. And it's on a variable rate of 8.5% with a 0.25 origination fee, and it's sunset to end on June 30th, 2024.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can you hear that in the back row? Okay, don't, when you do talk, make sure you
Okay.
get the mic closer or turn your body one way or the other.
Should I say it again?
No, I think they heard it,
Okay.
but it just,
All
I
right.
know there was discussion before you got here about just being able to hear in the back row.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. None. Okay, motion passes. All right, we will adjourn the meeting at 5:35. And we're gonna move into the working session to review updated budget. We're gonna start with board presenters Todd Netsky and Sheena Brandt from SMS. Todd, are you with us?
I am.
All right.
So I think,
Sheena, do you want me to talk about FY24 revised too, or did you want to speak to that and then I'll take FY25?
I will go over the FY24 budget right now.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very good, Sheena. Were you going to speak to 24 or did you want me to?
Yes, I will speak to the 24 budget.
Okay.
So our initial budget that was presented and approved in June projected a deficit of $18,141. So I am going to go over a comparison of what we initially projected and what we feel the changes will be this year and what we will be at the end of the year. After adjustments to revenues, our residential pupil units are projected to be 467 students, and the 23-24 adjusted pupil units will be 457.6. With these changes, we'll see, with these changes based on enrollment and also increased revenues from the state, our state revenues will increase $153,365. And I'm sorry, I'm actually going over the very first page of this packet. Do you want me to put this up?
To you. Ken.
I have copies right down here if anyone wants. The very first page. Our federal revenues will increase by $53,000. Property taxes will decrease $26,698. Local revenues will decrease $149,970. Overall, these categories will see a decrease of $303. Some will go up, some will go down, but they're just basically within each other, going up and down. And then on the second page, food service will see an increase of $35,860. Community ed will see an increase of $159,237. This has to do with our pool levy, which shifts revenue from Fund 1 to Fund 4.
Which is basically repaying back
The
what
pool,
was spent, right?
well, the pool levy, it's money that we get for having a pool in our school.
Not, it's separate from the repairs that were done.
Yes, this
Okay.
is separate from the bonds. But so overall, all our revenues combined, we'll see an increase of $255,278 from our initial budget in June. For our expenditures, I will be going over the object series on page 1 of this packet. And it just breaks down our expenditures in categories. Our salaries and wages, the expenditures will increase $208,298. We did budget a 3% increase in our wages, but what we saw was the prior year, our expenditures just were not bumped up enough. So after revising the budget again and looking at our final audit and our last year's data, we needed to bump it up even more. So just going over what our negotiations and everything coming to a close, and we'll be paying those retros out eventually, this is what we should finish at. Our benefits are actually going to be down $27,013 from what we budget. Purchase services should be down $37,000. Supplies will be up $74,462. Equipment will be down $138,927. Other expenditures will be up $174,447. Overall, we will have an increase of $254,361 in expenditures. We do have a few cost savings that have happened this year that will help to reduce that amount that we just indicated. We had a resignation and replacement of a kindergarten teacher, which resulted in a savings of $29,300. Resignation of a VPK teacher, we saved $46,600. We did have some savings on health insurance in the administration of $9,350. Resignation of the supervisor of maintenance and grounds, which is effective this month, $18,770. Reduction of an IT position, $8,000. And then we had a custodian bus position that was budgeted for this year, and then there was a resignation in July that resulted in a savings of $40,000. Reviewing our capital purchases, we initially budgeted to spend $320,228, but we are revising our budget to $83,596. We also plan to spend down our LTFM fund balance this year and our capital fund balances and complete transfers, which will help our bottom line at the end of the year. So if you look at our budget overview paper, it'd be this one. It should be like, I believe, the third page in the packet. So on the very top line, it shows our unassigned fund balance as of July 1, and then the net increase and decrease for each area. So we should finish off at $29,300 for an unassigned fund balance. And then in the restricted areas, the next section, we indicated what fund transfers we would complete during the year. Staff development, transfer $30,600. Operating capital, we would make a transfer of $130,000. Gifted and talented, $5,432. We'll make a transfer for additional library aid funds, which was new this fiscal year. $39,887, and so on. And then LTFM, we would transfer $46,000. So on the very bottom of the paper, we are predicting a deficit of $41,168 at the end of this fiscal year.
Sheena, but our unassigned projected balance is a negative 102 at the end of the year, correct?
Right.
Because we started at 131, and we had an increase of almost 30.
Right, yep, so we'll have transfers of $334,051 with an increase in our unassigned fund balance of $29,330.
If I could chime in, those transfers are essentially us utilizing our restricted fund balances like operating capital and LTFM to fund staff salaries, which we're able to do. Like operating capital, we're going to code our technology staff there, and LTFM, we can code our buildings and grounds director, the wages paid to date, which will allow us to utilize our restricted fund balances and help out our unassigned fund balance.
So it's
kind of a way of covering, but not really, I mean, the money's still the same, it's just we're covering with,
It's basically just shifting it,
You're using
yeah, but we're still.
funds that you have reserved.
right?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, not a good long-term solution.
Yes,
No.
okay, that's kind of
No,
what I was gonna
this
ask.
is not what you want to do long-term. It's reserved.
Okay. Any more questions on the current, or would you like to move on to FY '25?
I think we can move on. Yeah. Thank you, Sheena.
Okay. Thank you, Sheena. And I would just start out by saying Sheena, Jeff, and I, in building the FY24 revised budget, went through every account code and really did our best to tighten up budgets in every area that would be discretionary, if you will, from travel to supplies, equipment, etc. Really tighten up the budget this year the best we could with leaving, you know, a little bit of wiggle room to get us to the end of the year, but really tighten things up. And then we built our FY25 budget, rolling that forward and applying some high-level assumptions. So FY25, you know, it needs some more detailed work, but this is just to give you an idea of what it's looking like. We did build a revenue budget based on projected ADMs. We know the pay 24 levies, so the property taxes of $1,520,000 is accurate. You know, we did have some increases in state aid due to the special ed cross subsidy, which we also experienced in FY24, and basic skills revenue going up. But ADMs are projected to be down next year. And looking at our revenue then, we're projecting to be just under $7 million in revenue, down about $275,000 from FY24. And expenditures are down slightly, $7,301,000. A big piece of that is that pool transfer that Sheena spoke about is dropping by about $200,000 in FY25. So the overall high-level spending variance for the general fund is to have a deficit of $333,969. Revenue is less than expenditures. And our unassigned fund balance is projected to be at a deficit of $295,010. And that is with still doing those, with still having our tech staff coded to capital, buildings and grounds director coded to LTFM, and so on. So, and you can see our restricted fund balances are decreasing by about $140,000. Overall, our fund balances are going from $652,000 in total at the end of FY24 to $318,000 projected at the end of FY25, which is a decrease of about $334,000. So given this, given our deficit unassigned fund balance, we both need to get that balanced, and we also need to begin building that unassigned fund balance back up to a responsible level, if you will, and in the 8 to 12% range would be ideal. So therefore, the budget reduction target recommendation at this time is $750,000 for FY25. Any questions on that?
So Jeff, there was a document that was attached in the email that the board packet email with the that's a draft of potential reductions with options.
Yep.
And those have not been factored into
Those
this.
that's very preliminary, those are not in this.
Okay,
No.
that's what I was assuming. I just wanted to clarify.
I mean, these numbers are if we just sit here and do nothing and keep moving forward.
Yep,
Okay. And the 750, which is a large number, that also includes a couple of one-time payments that we deficited out this year. I mean, whether it's pool or whether it's chiller, I mean, is that, we're not looking at program cuts of 750,000.
we're looking at reducing our expenditures by $750,000.
Does that,
And that's to cover the expenses over revenues, to even that out, and have additional dollars to build the unassigned fund balance back up.
Okay, and that, I mean, what is the goal when you talk 8 to 12% for a number with this pattern? We're not talking in 1 year we're going to achieve that 8 to 12%. We're just moving in the right direction.
Moving in the right direction. And as Todd said, this, this is at a high level. I mean, once we start identifying specific cuts and putting that in, things might adjust a little bit, but this gives us kind of a ballpark idea of what we should be looking at as a target.
is the buildings and grounds supervisor position still in the expenditures budget under salaries and wages?
Portion of it would be,
A portion,
You said up to March when it's,
yep, so I revised it.
So how about in the 25 projection?
Right,
that is not, the remaining part of it is not in next fiscal year. So the cost savings that we would get from March to the end of the year,
no, but I'm just talking about, did we budget for that position in FY '25?
I can speak to that.
Okay,
So I did not catch that in the preliminary FY25, so there is the cost from FY24 will roll forward to FY25.
Okay.
So that'd be an example of this was a rollover in the last week that we did to provide an idea of where we're going to be next year, but yeah, that would make FY25 look a little better.
so those
Backing that
are
out.
not factored in at
So
this time.
we're still like if we fill that
Yep.
position, it's in the budget, so,
It is.
yes. Okay, that's what I said.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay.
was that everything then for that? Like, if
This
there's
is-
any more questions?
Yep.
Unless there's questions, any clarifications?
Okay. Well, thank you, Todd.
Yes, you're welcome.
Todd?
All right, I will.
I'm going to speak from a non-accounting standpoint, but I understand that we're dealing with a new template this year. Frontline is out and something new is in.
Correct.
And how does that benefit our ability to keep track of basically our daily numbers? I mean, what's changing there?
I can show you an example of it. I don't know if are you able to see my sharing it?
I think so.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I think the big advantage of this document is Frontline, had very similar reports in terms of monitoring the budget, but it didn't go to the detail that this budget file goes to. So, not to get too far in the weeds, but when we build out the revised budget, basically what you're seeing here is every account code in the general fund, and we have 2 years of history. We have what was in the adopted budget, and we have our revised budget. And basically we can walk through line by line and develop this budget and build next year's budget. And as we do that, everything rolls up into the summary level where we can see salaries and wages. Is everything making sense from a trend standpoint and a reasonableness standpoint? This will also be used to track the budget. And right now we're at 38.2% of our budget expended. Last year we were at 38.3% of where we ended up. So that tells you that our budget is appropriate. So that's an example of the monitoring side of it. Also, we have detail going down a level or further in the weeds. So state aid, each of the source codes that makes up our total state aid, we can analyze that. this is a good report for the finance committee level. And then also by program and by object. And again, as we build the budget, as we build next year's budget, these things will all roll forward.
Does this information,
it's just-
Tina, get entered manually, or do you like upload it like you were uploading into Frontline and it was just taking it and doing whatever?
Yeah, that's one negative, if you will, that it is a manual process. Basically, we have 3 tabs where we have to download the data from Smart. This is current year to date, prior year to date, 2 years ago, prior year to date, same point in time. So these are the expenditures, and then we also have the revenues. So each month, when the month is closed and reconciled and all transactions are posted, Sheena will go in and update this by downloading the data from Smart. So it maybe adds 10 minutes to the effort. Frontline was a little more streamlined, and you still had to do a similar process where you had to download the data and format it, but the upload process was quicker.
So just a question, what flag does Sheena have if something doesn't upload correctly? If something isn't included in that final report? Is there something that flags?
I think what you're getting at is, can we be confident that every account code is accounted for or something like that?
Yes, yes.
So we do have check totals at the bottom of each page, so you can see that these are zeros here. So there are check totals that tell you that everything from the historical data is being pulled into the summary worksheets. And we have similar checks and balances, if you will, at the end of each of these by object code.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Really important.
Yes.
I do have to say that I like these reports. They're much more detailed than what the things that were coming out of the other Frontline, yeah.
Was the Frontline problem that it was just not seeing those details and allowed that to get out of hand too quickly?
I think a couple of things happened with Frontline, like when we were doing our long-range planning. That was early on in Sheena's tenure, if you will, and FY22 wasn't final yet, so we had an adopted budget that was based on numbers. Essentially, the budget wasn't where it should have been, so we were building a plan based on inaccurate data, and by the time we realized FY22 numbers, came in over budget, it just basically it kind of compounded itself before we realized we had built a plan on not a strong budget, I guess is the way I would put it.
Yeah.
Bobby?
How many years do you think it will take for us to feel like we're in a good spot?
You mean like the 8 to 12%, which I think would make us all feel better if we had a fund balance of that size? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I just don't like the stress associated with this meeting. So how many years until we don't have this kind of, where we're worried?
Well, there's lots of variables. I think if we just rely just on budget cuts, I would say 2 to 3 years, but if you start looking at some revenues, that would help the situation. I think inevitably we're going to have to look at some revenue sources. But the thing right now with any kind of levy, whether it's operating levy or a bond levy and that stuff, those dollars don't come available until FY26. So our challenge right now is we got to get through FY24. We're going to still be in the hole, but above SOE, barring any unexpected expenditures, which can happen at any anytime, but we're a little lucky, and speaking to not spending any dollars that we don't have to. We should be able to get through this year. Next year, we're gonna have to make cuts, so that revenues and expenditures match, and we wanna get out of the hole. That's next year's challenge. And I think the public would expect the school to be at that level, before we ask them for any additional tax dollars, new kind of actions. We have, our expenses are exceeding our current revenues, and that was managing staff based on.
Got another question.
We absolutely.
I'm coming into learning about this whole budget system, I'm interested in it. Of course, everyone is concerned. I believe what Todd just said is we built a plan on not a strong budget, ultimately using Frontline, my understanding. That's the software program that was in the before.
Correct.
So who is responsible for that information, or who was responsible for that information in monitoring that to ensure that it was correct?
That would have been my staff, initially Crystal, and then Sheena took over. There's lots of reasons why maybe it wasn't identified earlier on, just with lots of challenges beyond the budget, just within the office that Sheena was straightening out. And I don't know, I think that's maybe a difficult to answer that question.
Yeah, I went.
I mean, bottom line is it was SMS that was in charge and should have identified it sooner.
Yeah.
And I hold some responsibility too as a superintendent. I mean, I have to accept that as well.
The follow-up with that is, how long have we been using Frontline?
Again, I don't know that it's like throw Frontline under the bus because we loaded a budget in that wasn't accurate and we didn't catch it. The Frontline tool works well if you start with a budget that's strong and accurate. So, but to answer your question, I believe we're in year 2 of using Frontline.
And as a school or as a board, as it affects all of us, how long do we know how long the information was being entered or not monitored? Is this a 1 year or 2 year? Do we have that pinned down as far as how far back it goes towards, or is it not being accurate in there?
I don't think it's that
I
the
don't think
accounting
that's-
is inaccurate. It's, Frontline is you take the numbers out of the accounting system and put them into Frontline, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but those reports were not happening accurately to reflect what we needed them to reflect. So it's not, the accounting system was fine, it's the reporting
And
software.
we had new
That-
staff in the business office, and if you look at our last year's audit, we had more findings with just basic documentation. But I'm gonna go back before even COVID, we had a board meeting, I can't remember what month it was, May or something, where we talked about our declining enrollment and a need to start looking at some cuts. So where we're at now isn't just because of Frontline or changes in staff. It's something that's been coming for some time because we've had declining enrollment. And when we had the COVID, we had all that federal dollars that kind of pushed the issue ahead a little bit. This last year we had some things that hit our unassigned fund balance faster. But the cutting the $750,000 has been building up for quite a few years.
And that came out during our strategic planning even.
strategic planning. You know, last year in March, we were sitting here making some cuts, and I said, this is only the beginning. We're not making enough cuts. But when you lose your reserve, that's where things get tight. So if we would be sitting with $400,000 or $500,000 reserve, we'd have a little more breathing room. We still have to make these cuts eventually, because that's just the nature of it when you have declining enrollment.
Well, I just have one more question, if you don't mind. The line of credit is border bank. Perhaps it's done, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but did we reach out to a different banks besides border bank to entertain whether interest rates were cheaper with one bank versus the other? Because I only saw in the minutes about border bank.
We selected Board Bank because that's the board selected institution, so that's why we went with Board Bank. That's who we bank with. That's where we're on the payroll. It just makes sense.
We were advised to use our local bank that we've been using.
And that was from Ellers, advised that we run it through.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, at this time, we'll move forward. And next, we have the superintendent report.
My reports. So just a couple things. I got an email from Matt Hammer at Ellers today. And we've been talking about looking at options for revenue. It's not going to help us right now making these cuts, but it's something that's going to be coming up. So I could possibly get him here on February 26th at our next board meeting, maybe during the working session. And he could kind of give you a high level, some options for asking voters to increase operating revenue, or versus getting like a capital projects levy. We have projects, building facility projects that I think need to be addressed sooner than later. So that needs to be in the mix. So maybe talk about some facility project options for generating revenue, and start getting us thinking about that side of it as well. We could do it during the board working session if we want that now, or we could wait longer and do something with a special board meeting. Just looking for some direction. He's willing to come here in person on the 26th because he's got a neighboring district that he's going to be going to. So,
In person is nice. Mm-hmm.
So should I plan on adding him to our working session on the 26th?
I believe so.
Okay.
And he'd be contributing thoughts on different revenues. I mean, different
All our
revenue paths.
everything we do with bond sales and refinancing, we've always worked with Ellers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
The next thing I have on my list is on the 12th at 3:30 in the ITV room, I've scheduled a district cabinet committee. And this is an internal committee that actually, when COVID came around, this is the committee that we established to kind of get input from all departments and levels within the school system. I'm calling this committee in again to look at the budget cuts. I've been working on a number of reductions with different staff, but I want to present that to this group, get their feedback, maybe they have ideas before moving forward more formally with the board. So I'm thinking February 12th. Depending on how that goes, I may or may not, I'm hoping to have a list of recommended reductions. I'm not sure if we'll have every finite thing, but most of the staffing. Present that informally during the working session in February. And we wouldn't take action until probably March at the earliest. But once we get through that process and everyone can see what we're looking at for reductions, maybe schedule a public input meeting sometime after that, before the next board meeting in March.
What's our timelines as far as contractually?
I think, I want to say by the April board meeting would be the
Okay, that's what I was
absolute latest.
thinking it was
I'd rather
coming.
do it in March.
Yep,
There's some open positions in neighboring districts. I've put bugs in certain people's ears just to let them know. So they have opportunities to find other employment, so. Any questions on that? Finally, the buildings and grounds, we had a team meeting. You're here with Brian. I want Belter, not Brian Bill, Brian Belter, 2 Bs, and so Brian does all the mapping and scheduling stuff and consulting. So a couple of us, Dale and Kyle and Seth, met with him. And this is kind of our initial weekly buildings and ground team committee meeting. And we're going to continue that next week. And then Seth, you're done on the 29th. So we got to get our ducks in a row and have a system put up for that, so we get through the rest of this year. That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Do you plan on having a buildings and grounds meeting with the building and grounds committee before Seth leaves?
Yes,
Okay.
we can do that. So right now, we have a big yellow piece of paper with stuff written all over it.
Yeah.
We're gonna clean that up and we'll have something presentable for the, and then we'll report at the February board meeting as well, so, yep.
And I know you said it, but board meeting discussing, this upcoming board meeting discussing the potential cuts, or at least thoughts about that. And then if public wants input, we would schedule a public meeting beyond
Yep.
that?
Yep.
Okay.
if we do a referendum, is it too late? I mean,
So an
for this
operating
year?
referendum would have to be this, the soonest you could do it would be November, and I have to look at this timetable if it's
Okay.
too late for that.
Okay. I think I saw that the Falls is doing one this
Yeah.
year.
So operating referendums have to be done at the November election.
Okay.
Capital projects and bond levies, there's 5 months, 5 different dates that you can run those, other than the November election.
And the one we were looking at one point was August, I think.
Mhm.
And I think we have all the way until late this spring to apply for that, don't we? March, end of March anyway.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the chart.
I remember the dates you threw out there,
Yeah.
but
That'll,
this guy at the board meeting probably would shed some light on that.
Yes, and I can resend the chart too. It's, yep. But again, any of those dollars I got passed, we would not see that until FY '26.
Right.
So there's no way we can get around some cuts for FY '25. And those are cuts that, most of those cuts need to take place because we have been deficit spending for quite a while. We've had the luxury of having a unassigned fund balance that has allowed us to do that.
Yeah.
We don't have that right now. So we need to take a look at our enrollment and adjust accordingly. Any other questions? Yes.
So just so I understand correct, whether or not you cut people or don't cut people at this point, we're too late, aren't we, as far as not having the state come in and make some decisions for us? Is that
For the
correct?
SOD, statutory operating debt,
Right.
right now, we're not anticipating that for the end of this fiscal year. We're not in statutory operating debt at this time.
That's negative 2.5, right?
2.5 as of your June 30th.
I think we had talked about it last time we met, We're
as
going to prepare
preparing.
as if we are
Yes.
heading in that, just because it's a good thing to do.
Yep.
It's gonna get us, it's gonna help get us on the right track if we at least move in
So-
that direction.
The state isn't gonna do anything right now because we're not in SOD. But I do have the information from them. If we were in SOD, these are the steps we would take. And we've already taken some of those steps ahead of time. Like looking at all of your unreserved funds and transferring as much of your expenses out of your unassigned, in using up those dollars and preserve your unassigned fund balance. Because that's really what the state looks at as far as SOD. So we had enough other funds that were restricted that we could use for salaries and things like that. And normally you wouldn't do that. You're allowed to do it, but normally you don't do that because that's, capital outlays for equipment and stuff like that. And you really need to have your budget set so that your state aid, your Fund 1 revenue supports your staff. And those reserved funds are to make sure that your equipment stays up to snuff, that you don't run old buses, that type of thing. So, but when you get in financial hard times, being able to dip into those to cover things until you can get through this, that's kind of what we're doing. So unless there's an unexpected expenditure that we're not anticipating that we can't get around, I feel those numbers are pretty solid, and we'll still be in a negative balance, but not so far that we'd be considered SOD this coming June. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
Let's just see if there's any more questions, right? Okay. So citizens forums, if anybody else has any further questions, now is the time. None, then we will adjourn the meeting, right?
Working session.
At 6:18.